The city was a cold, uncaring beast that night. Rain slicked the streets. It always seemed to rain when something terrible happened. Edward Blake knew trouble. He had courted it his whole life, but this time trouble found him. It smashed through his penthouse door. It was an appointment he could not miss. Blake, once the comedian, faced his killer. He was old, but the fight was still in him. Not enough fight, though. Not this time. The struggle was brief, brutal. He was thrown through the window, a long fall to the indifferent pavement below. His life ended with a sickening thud, a bloody smiley face badge. His old emblem lay in the gutter. Rorschach arrived later, a shadow in a trench coat, a face that was always shifting, never still. He saw the police. He saw the mess. He saw what they missed, or what they chose to ignore. Blake was one of them, a masked adventurer, a government man, not just some random citizen. Rorschach's journal would note the details. The forced entry, the nature of Blake's injuries. The comedian was strong. Whoever did this was stronger or smarter or both. This wasn't a robbery gone wrong. This was an execution, a statement. Rorschach felt a cold dread. This was just the beginning of something ugly. He climbed the fire escape, slipped into Blake's apartment. The police were clumsy. They left clues behind. Rorschach was meticulous. He found the hidden closet, the comedian's costume, the weapons, the memories of a violent past. Blake was a monster to some, a hero to others, a patriot, a nihilist. He laughed at the joke of the world. Now the joke was on him. Rorschach touched the cold fabric of the uniform. He understood Blake in a way. They were both relics. Dinosaurs waiting for the meteor, but this meteor felt deliberately aimed. Someone was hunting masks. The discovery of Blake's identity as the comedian was no surprise to Rorschach. He knew the world at large had perhaps forgotten or been encouraged to forget. The keen act had outlawed vigilantes years ago. Most had retired, faded into obscurity, or sold out like Blake, working for the government, doing their dirty work in foreign lands. The comedian had blood on his hands, so much blood, from Vietnam, from riots, from places nobody talked about. His death was a message. Rorschach had to figure out who sent it and why. The list of enemies was long, very long, but this felt different, more personal, more calculated. Rorschach knew he had to warn the others, the remaining few, those who had once worn masks, those who had stood against the darkness or become part of it. He started with Daniel Dreiberg, the night owl, living a quiet life, surrounded by his old gadgets, his old glories. Dreiberg was soft now. He didn't want to hear it. He thought Rorschach was paranoid. Mask killer theory, he called it. Dismissive. Dreiberg wanted the past to stay buried. He preferred his comfortable present, his books, his birds, but fear had a way of seeping through even the thickest walls of denial. Rorschach's words planted a seed of doubt, a tiny, cold seed. Next was Adrian Veidt, Ozymandias, the smartest man in the world, or so he claimed. Veidt had built an empire, toys, perfumes, self-help programs. He had embraced the future, left the masked life far behind. He listened to Rorschach politely, condescendingly. Veidt was always calm, always in control. He offered condolences for Blake, but he too dismissed the idea of a conspiracy. He suggested Blake's death was likely due to some old grudge, some forgotten enemy. The comedian had made many. Veidt's smooth assurances felt hollow, too practiced. Rorschach left, unconvinced. The air in Veidt's Arctic retreat felt just as cold as the city streets. Then Dr. Manhattan and Laurie Juspecic, the Silk Spectre. Manhattan was a god walking among men, blue skin, limitless power. He saw time differently, past, present, future, all at once. Laurie was his reluctant companion, trapped in his shadow. Rorschach's warning barely registered with Manhattan. What was one death to a being who perceived eternity? Laurie, however, felt a flicker of alarm. Blake had been a crude, awful man. He had assaulted her mother, yet his death was unsettling. Another piece of her strange, fractured life chipped away. She clung to Manhattan, her anchor, her cage. Rorschach's grim pronouncements only added to the oppressive atmosphere surrounding them. Blake's funeral was a somber affair. Rain fell, fittingly. A few old faces, some government officials, a flag-draped coffin. The comedian was buried with military honors. A hero, they called him. Rorschach watched from a distance. He saw Dreiberg, he saw Veidt, he saw Laurie standing beside Manhattan. The air was thick with unspoken words, with old resentments, with new fears. The comedian's life had been a cruel joke. His death felt like the punchline, a punchline that Rorschach was determined to understand. The grave was a cold, dark place, but the truth he suspected was even colder and darker. The situation deteriorated quickly. Accusations surfaced against Dr. Manhattan. Old colleagues, former lovers, they claimed he had given them cancer, his radioactive presence, a slow, invisible poison. The media latched onto the story, a feeding frenzy. Was their blue savior a walking plague? The public, already on edge, began to panic. Manhattan, the nation's ultimate deterrent, was now a source of fear. He had always been detached, otherworldly. This new development pushed him further away. He saw the patterns, the converging lines of probability. He saw the accusations for what they were. Part of a larger design. Manhattan tried to explain, to reassure, but human emotions were a chaotic variable he could never fully master. His attempts at communication were often misinterpreted, seen as cold, uncaring. The pressure mounted from the government, from the press, from Laurie, who felt the weight of his growing isolation. He was tired of their world, their fears, their endless messy complexities. He had the power to reshape galaxies, yet he was being hounded by microscopic anxieties. He made a decision, a simple one for him. He would leave. He vanished, reappeared on Mars, alone, on a silent red world, far from humanity. His departure sent shockwaves across the globe. The Cold War, held in a delicate balance by his presence, instantly escalated. Soviet tanks rumbled, missiles were readied, the doomsday clock lurched closer to midnight. Without Manhattan, America was vulnerable. The world held its breath. Political turmoil erupted, riots in the streets. Fear was a contagion, spreading faster than any disease. The carefully constructed order of things began to crumble. The comedian's death was a spark. Manhattan's exile was an inferno. Rorschach watched it all. His mask killer theory seemed almost quaint now, compared to the looming threat of nuclear annihilation. Amidst this chaos, an attempt was made on Adrian Veidt's life, a professional hit. Veidt, Ozymandias, fought back with his trademark speed and precision. He survived, but the attack was significant. It lent credence to the idea of a conspiracy. Someone was indeed targeting former heroes, or perhaps someone was trying to silence Veidt for other reasons. The world was spinning out of control. The pieces of the puzzle were scattered, covered in blood, and Rorschach, a lone figure in the shadows, kept trying to put them together. Even as the picture grew more horrifying with each new revelation, he knew this was all connected. Rorschach continued his grim investigation. He sought out Moloch, Edgar Jacobi, a former supervillain, now old, sick, dying of cancer. Moloch had connections. He might know something. Rorschach visited him, asked his questions. Moloch was scared. He spoke of the comedian, of a visit Blake made to him shortly before his death. Blake was drunk, distraught. He talked about an island, about something terrible he had discovered. Moloch knew little more, or claimed to. Rorschach left, his suspicions growing. Moloch was a loose end, and loose ends in this kind of game often got tied up, permanently. He returned to Moloch's apartment later, a bad feeling, a premonition. He found Moloch dead, shot in the head. The police were already there. Sirens wailing, lights flashing. It was a setup too perfect, too clean. Rorschach was framed, the evidence planted. They were waiting for him. He fought, of course he fought. He was a cornered animal, vicious, desperate, but they were too many. He was overwhelmed, beaten, unmasked. His face revealed to the world. Walter Kovac, a nobody, a madman. The shifting patterns of his mask were stilled, his identity exposed, his crusade seemingly over. The capture of Rorschach was a media sensation. The city breathed a collective sigh of relief. The monster was caught, the vigilante who terrorized the underworld, but for some it was a chilling development. For Dryberg it was a wake-up call. Rorschach, for all his brutality, had been right. There was a conspiracy. And now, one of the few people trying to uncover it was behind bars. The system Rorschach so despised had finally caught up with him. Or rather, he had been fed to it, a convenient scapegoat. His journal, his lifeline, his only confidant, was now in the hands of the authorities. In prison, Kovac was subjected to psychological evaluation. They wanted to understand him, to label him, to explain away his righteous fury as mere insanity. Dr. Malcolm Long, his psychiatrist, tried to peel back the layers, to find the man beneath the mask. Kovac told his story, a childhood of abuse, a world of filth. The moment he became Rorschach, the moment Walter Kovac died. Dr. Long listened. He was shaken. He saw the abyss, and the abyss stared back. Rorschach's conviction was absolute. No compromise, even in defeat. even when facing the prospect of a lifetime in chains or worse. Section 5, Ashes and Embers, Old Flames, rekindled in a dying world. Laurie Juspecic felt adrift. Manhattan was gone. Her mother, Sally Jupiter, the original Silk Spectre, offered little comfort, only faded memories and regrets. Laurie was tired of being a shadow, tired of being defined by the men in her life. The comedian, her mother's attacker. Dr. Manhattan, her demigod lover. She sought out Dan Dryberg, Night Owl. He was a reminder of a different time. A time when being a hero felt simpler, less compromised. They were both relics. Two birds with clipped wings, searching for a reason to fly again. Or at least a reason to keep breathing. Their shared past, their shared sense of obsolescence drew them together. Dryberg, hesitant at first, found himself opening up to Laurie. He showed her his workshop, Archie, his owlship. The dusty costumes, symbols of a life he thought he had outgrown. Laurie saw the longing in his eyes, the same longing she felt in her own heart, for purpose, for connection, for something real in a world that felt increasingly fake. Their conversations were tentative, awkward, but a spark was there, an ember glowing in the ashes of their former lives, a fragile hope in the face of overwhelming despair. The pull of their old identities was strong. The world was falling apart. Nuclear war seemed inevitable. What was the point of staying retired, of staying safe? They decided to put on the costumes again, not for glory, not for applause, but because it was the only thing they knew how to do, the only way they felt alive. Their first night out was clumsy, exhilarating. They rescued people from a burning tenement. For a few brief moments, they were Night Owl and Silk Spectre again, heroes. It felt good, it felt right. It was a small act of defiance against the encroaching darkness. Their rekindled partnership soon blossomed into romance. Two lonely souls finding solace in each other's arms. Their love was a desperate act, a shield against the cold, a small warm light in the vast uncaring night. Dryberg found a courage he thought he had lost. Laurie found a sense of agency she had never truly possessed. They were no longer just sidekicks or appendages. They were individuals, choosing their own path, even if that path led directly into the heart of the storm. Their happiness was fragile, threatened by the chaos around them and by the secrets that were yet to be revealed. Section 6. Martian Dialogues and Earthly Pursuits. Truths on a Red Planet. Dr. Manhattan, from his self-imposed exile on Mars, saw Laurie's new relationship. He saw everything. Time was an open book to him. He decided to bring her to Mars, not out of jealousy, but out of a desire to understand, or perhaps to make her understand. He teleported her from Earth, materialized her on the red, barren landscape. The argument that followed was inevitable. Laurie, terrified and furious, confronted him, accused him of his detachment, his inhumanity, his inability to care about the fate of the world he had abandoned. She pleaded with him to return, to save them. Manhattan remained impassive. He showed her the universe, the vastness of space, the intricate dance of atoms. He argued that human life, human concerns were insignificant, a fleeting cosmic accident. He tried to explain his perspective, why Earth's problems no longer held his interest, why he preferred the cold, logical beauty of Mars. Laurie fought back. She argued for the value of life, for love, for hope, for the messy, imperfect, beautiful chaos of humanity. Their debate raged across the desolate plains of the Red Planet, a clash of philosophies, a battle for the soul of a god, or what was left of it. In a desperate attempt to make him see, to make him feel, Laurie dredged up her past. Her complicated relationship with her mother, her confusion about her own identity, and then a revelation, a truth Manhattan had always known but never shared. He showed her the undeniable reality. Edward Blake, the comedian, was her father, the man who had assaulted her mother, the man whose violent legacy she carried in her blood. The shock was profound, devastating. Laurie's world tilted on its axis. Everything she thought she knew about herself, about her family, it was all a lie or a half-truth. The revelation was a catalyst. It shattered Laurie's remaining illusions, but it also, paradoxically, reconnected Manhattan to humanity, the sheer improbability of it all, the intricate, unlikely chain of events that led to Laurie's existence. A thermodynamic miracle. He saw beauty in the chaos. He saw meaning in the mess. He agreed to return to Earth to try and help. But the truth about her father changed Laurie forever. It was a bitter pill, a heavy burden, but it also freed her. She was no longer just Silk Spectre. She was Laurie Juspetsik, daughter of the comedian, a survivor. Section 7. The scent of conspiracy, two detectives, one unraveling truth. Back on Earth, Dan Dreiberg was consumed with worry. Laurie was gone, vanished. He suspected Manhattan's involvement. He felt helpless, alone. But then a new purpose emerged. Rorschach's journal had been published, mailed to a small independent newspaper. The ravings of a madman, most called it. But Dreiberg knew Rorschach. He knew there was truth in those pages. The journal detailed Rorschach's investigation, his suspicions, his masked killer theory. Dreiberg decided he had to act. He had to find out what happened to Rorschach. He had to continue the investigation. He owed it to his former comrade. His first step was to break Rorschach out of prison. A daring plan, risky but necessary. He donned the night owl costume once more, used Archie, his owlship, to stage a chaotic rescue during a prison riot. The reunion was tense. Rorschach, ever distrustful, was initially wary. But Dreiberg's actions spoke louder than words. They were partners again, uneasy allies bound by a shared purpose. Two masked figures against a world teetering on the brink. They were an unlikely pair, the pragmatic idealist and the uncompromising absolutist. But together they were a force to be reckoned with. They followed the leads in Rorschach's journal, talked to informants, pieced together the fragments of the conspiracy. Their investigation led them to Janie Slater, Manhattan's former lover, and to Wally Weaver, one of his old colleagues, both dying of cancer, both part of the smear campaign that drove Manhattan to Mars. They learned about Pyramid Transnational, a company owned by Adrian Veidt. The pieces began to fit. Veidt's name kept coming up. Ozymandias, the smartest man in the world, the one who had seemed so unconcerned, so dismissive of Rorschach's warnings. The trail pointed towards Veidt's Antarctic retreat, Karnak, a fortress of solitude, a monument to his own genius. Rorschach and Night Owl knew this was the end game. They had to confront Veidt. To uncover his role in this deadly game, they flew Archie through frozen skies towards the heart of the conspiracy. The journey was fraught with tension. They knew they were flying towards a confrontation with a man who was always 10 steps ahead, a man who had outmaneuvered them all. The fate of the world hung in the balance, and they were the only ones who seemed to care enough to find the truth, or so they thought. Section 8. The Architect of Peace, a grand deception revealed. They arrived at Karnak, Veidt's icy sanctuary. He was expecting them, of course he was. Adrian Veidt, Ozymandias, greeted them calmly. Surrounded by monitors displaying news reports from around the world, reports of chaos, panic, imminent war, he confessed. Everything. He was the architect, the puppet master. He had killed the comedian because Blake had stumbled upon his plan. He had orchestrated the cancer scare to drive Manhattan away. He had faked the assassination attempt on himself to deflect suspicion. He had framed Rorschach. It was all his design, a complex, intricate, horrifying plan. Veidt explained his motive: to save humanity from itself, to avert nuclear war. The Cold War was a powder keg, ready to ignite. He believed the only way to unite the world, to stop the superpowers from destroying each other, was to give them a common enemy, a manufactured threat, something so terrifying, so devastating that it would force them to lay down their arms, to join hands against a greater foe. His plan was monstrous in its scale, in its audacity. He had engineered a fake alien invasion, a psychic shockwave designed to kill millions in New York City, a sacrifice, he called it, for the greater good. Rorschach and Night Owl were horrified, stunned into silence. Veidt's logic was chillingly rational, his intentions arguably noble, but his methods were barbaric. Mass murder on an unprecedented scale. He believed he was a savior, a modern-day Alexander the Great, uniting the world through conquest, or in this case, through terror. He showed them the creature, genetically engineered, designed to die upon arrival, releasing a massive psychic blast. The countdown was already underway. It was too late to stop it. His plan was already in motion. The final act had begun. The moral conflict was stark. Veidt argued that his actions, however terrible, would save billions, that the deaths of a few million were a small price to pay for world peace. Night Owl, a humanist at heart, was torn. He saw the twisted logic, the desperate gamble. Rorschach, however, saw only evil. Black and white, no shades of grey, no compromise. He attacked Veidt. A futile gesture. Veidt, the pinnacle of human conditioning, easily subdued him just as the creature was teleported to New York. The city screamed, millions died, and then an eerie silence, followed by news reports of a world united in fear and in peace. Section 9. No compromise, the terrible price of utopia. The destruction in New York was unimaginable. Half the city obliterated, millions dead. The psychic shockwave had done its work. The world reeled. But then, as Veidt predicted, the impossible happened. The United States and the Soviet Union, enemies for decades, declared an end to hostilities. They pledged to work together against this new, terrifying alien threat. Veidt's horrific plan had worked. World peace, achieved through a monstrous lie, through the slaughter of innocents. Dr. Manhattan and Laurie arrived at Karnak. They had witnessed the devastation. Manhattan understood Veidt's calculations, the cold, hard logic of it. Laurie was appalled. Dreiberg was numb. He saw the peace. He saw the price. He was complicit now by his silence. Veidt argued that the truth must never be revealed, that the fragile peace would shatter if the world knew it was based on a deception. He asked for their cooperation, their silence, for the good of humanity. Manhattan agreed. The new reality, however flawed, was preferable to nuclear annihilation. Laurie, sickened, eventually conceded. Dreiberg, burdened by guilt, also chose silence. It was a bitter pill, a compromise that tasted like ash. The utopia was built on a foundation of corpses, but Rorschach refused. Never compromise, he snarled. Not even in the face of Armageddon. He would not be part of their lie. He would tell the world. He picked up his journal. He would expose Veidt. He would expose them all. He walked out into the Antarctic snow, towards the city, towards the truth. Manhattan appeared before him, a blue god blocking his path. Manhattan understood Rorschach's conviction, but he also understood the stakes. He could not allow Rorschach to destroy the fragile peace. He gave Rorschach a choice, silence or death. Rorschach knew what he had to do. He tore off his mask, Walter Kovac, tears streaming down his face. He screamed at Manhattan, do it. He would not compromise. He would rather die. Manhattan raised his hand, a flash of blue light. Rorschach was gone, obliterated. Only a bloodstain on the snow remained. His journal, however, was already on its way. Mailed to the New Frontiersman, a small, right-wing newspaper. The truth, waiting to be discovered. Veidt achieved his peace. Dreiberg and Laurie tried to build new lives, haunted by what they knew. Manhattan left Earth again, perhaps forever. The Watchmen were over, or were they? The final outcome remained uncertain, resting in the hands of a grubby news editor reaching for a pile of crank mail.